The internet wasn't always the safe, sanitized place we know today. Before algorithms controlled what we saw, before social media had rules for almost everything, there was a side of the internet where you could stumble across anything truly disturbing with nothing more than just a simple click. These websites became known as shock sites. Their entire purpose was to show visitors something shocking, disturbing, or straight up horrifying. Sometimes it was an image, sometimes it was also a video, and sometimes you had absolutely no idea what you were looking at. Many of these websites have disappeared, but some of them have become so infamous that their names are still remembered today. These are some of the scariest shock sites to ever exist. One of the most infamous names in the early internet history was Rotten.com. Launched in the late 1990s, the website became known for its collection of disturbing photographs and controversial content. Unlike modern social media, there was no algorithm trying to protect you from seeing something disturbing. You could simply visit the website, click around, and then find yourself looking at something completely disturbing. Rotten.com became a symbol of the darker side of the early internet, and for a lot of people, it was their first introduction to the world of shock sites. But Rotten.com was only the beginning. If Rotten.com represented the early shock site era, Ogreish took things even further. The website became infamous for hosting extremely disturbing real-world footage. The name itself became well known across internet forums and message boards. People would share links to the site with almost no warning, sometimes daring each other to click. The disturbing part wasn't just what was on the website, it was the fact that you could be sitting at home completely unaware of what you're about to see, and that one link could suddenly take you somewhere you couldn't unsee. Eventually, Ogreish would evolve into something else, but its reputation had already been cemented in the internet history. And then years later, BestScore became one of the most infamous shock sites on the internet. Unlike some earlier websites, BestScore focused heavily on real-world footage and images. The website attracted millions of visitors, but it also became extremely controversial. For some people, it was a place to see the harsh realities of the world. For others, it crossed a line by turning real human suffering into entertainment. Eventually, the website became involved in legal controversy surrounding some of the content it had hosted. And although the original site is no longer what it once was, its name remains one of the most recognizable in the history of shock websites. Unlike many shock sites, LiveLeak wasn't originally created solely around gore. It became a massive video sharing platform where people could upload footage that might not have been allowed on mainstream websites. This includes war footage, accidents, political violence, and other disturbing real-world events. For years, LiveLeak became known as a place where you could find videos that would never appear on traditional television, but that's what made it so controversial. You never really knew what you were going to see. One video could be a documentary clip, the next could be something genuinely horrifying. LiveLeak eventually shut down in 2021, but for many people who grew up on the early internet, the name is still synonymous with the darker side of the online video. Perhaps the creepiest part of the shock site era is that many of these websites simply vanished, no announcement and no explanation. One day a website that had existed for years would suddenly be gone. Sometimes the domain disappeared, sometimes the servers were just shut down, and sometimes all that remained were screenshots and stories from people who had visited them. This created an entirely different kind of internet horror, because when something disappears from the internet, it can become almost impossible to know exactly what was there. And that brings us to the strangest part of shock sites. The internet has a very long memory. Even when the websites themselves disappear, people continue talking about them. Screenshots get reposted, videos get archived, and stories get passed down from one generation of internet users to the next. The early internet was a completely different place. You could find incredible things, you could discover communities you never knew existed. But what you could also stumble into is something that would stay with you for years. Shock sites were a strange part of internet history. And while many of them are gone today, their legacy remains. Because sometimes the scariest thing about the internet isn't what you can find. It's knowing that somewhere out there, there are still things you haven't found yet.